23rd April 1992. Mumbai. The Bombay Stock Exchange is in freefall. In a single day, the Sensex crashes 570 points. Millions of ordinary Indians, teachers, clerks, retired government servants, watch their savings vanish. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows how. But one woman does. Journalist Sucheta Dalal at the Times of India has a file on her desk that is about to detonate like a bomb. Inside it, evidence that one man, just one man, had siphoned 5,000 crore rupees from India's banking system. Not a corporation. Not a cartel. One man. His name was Harshad Mehta. He lived in a 15,000 square foot penthouse in Worli. He drove a fleet of cars, Toyota, Lexus, Rolls-Royce. He was called the Big Bull. The media loved him. The banks trusted him. The system had no idea it was being robbed blind. I'm Vikram. I've spent 15 years covering financial frauds. I've sat inside CBI interrogation rooms. I've read the charge sheets nobody publishes. And I'm telling you, the Harshad Mehta scam is not just a crime story. It is a mirror held up to India's face. What we saw in that mirror should haunt us still. Let me take you back to the 1980s. India's economy is locked behind license Raj walls. The Bombay Stock Exchange is a chaotic, paper-driven bazaar. Most middle-class Indians don't invest in stocks, it feels like gambling. But Harshad Mehta, a Gujarati boy who once sold hosiery and worked as a dispatch clerk, sees something nobody else does. He sees a broken system. And broken systems, for someone smart enough, are gold mines. By the mid-1980s, Harshad is working as a broker. He is aggressive, charming, and dangerously good at reading markets. He builds a client base. He builds a reputation. And slowly, very slowly, he begins to understand one critical thing: the Indian banking system runs on trust, not verification. At the heart of his eventual fraud is a legitimate financial instrument called the Ready Forward Deal, or RFD. Banks use it to lend money to each other for short periods, usually 15 days, against government securities as collateral. The system is meant to be safe. It has one fatal flaw: the securities sometimes don't physically move. They sit with brokers. And brokers, apparently, can be trusted. Harshad Mehta decided to test that trust. He inserted himself as the middleman between banks. He convinced Bank A that it was investing in government securities held by Bank B. But the securities were fake, delayed, or simply non-existent. The money, however, was very real. He used it to buy stocks massively, aggressively, driving prices through the roof. The market loved him. Nobody asked questions. Between 1991 and April 1992, Harshad Mehta orchestrated what investigators would later call the largest securities fraud in Indian banking history. Here's exactly how it worked, and I want you to follow this carefully. Harshad would approach Bank A and say, "I have government securities. I'll sell them to you for 15 days. You give me cash now, I give you the securities back plus interest." Bank A agrees. It's standard RF deal procedure. Except Harshad doesn't always have the securities. What he has is a bank receipt, a BR, issued by smaller cooperative banks, banks like the Bank of Crore and the Metropolitan Cooperative Bank, that were essentially in his pocket. These BRs said, "Yes, we hold the securities." They didn't. It was paper backed by nothing. The cash that Bank A handed over would land in Harshad's accounts. He would then pump that money into the stock market. He targeted specific stocks, ACC Cement most famously. ACC's share price went from 200 rupee to 9,000 rupees in under a year. That's a 4,400% rise. People watching from the outside thought he was a genius. They followed him into those stocks. The Sensex itself went from 1,000 points in 1990 to 4,500 points by early 1992. An entire nation's optimism was being manufactured by one man with borrowed, stolen money. The State Bank of India alone lost 500 crore rupees. National Housing Bank, 1,200 crore rupees. The total exposure across 31 banks, over 5,000 crore rupees, equivalent to roughly 1 lakh rupees crore in today's money. And not a single auditor flagged it. Not one. 23rd April 1992. The Times of India. Sucheta Dalal publishes a story. It is precise. It is sourced. It names Harshad Mehta. It explains the ready-forward deal mechanism. It is, in my honest assessment as a journalist of 15 years, one of the most consequential pieces of investigative reporting in Indian history. Within hours of publication, the markets begin to crack. Within days, they collapse. The Sensex drops from 4,500 to under 2,500 in weeks. Investors who had poured life savings into ACC, Apollo Tyres, and dozens of other Harshad-pumped stocks watched them crater. An estimated 1 crore retail investors were affected. People lost homes. Marriages broke. At least one documented suicide in Maharashtra was directly linked to stock market losses that April. Harshad tried to fight back. He went on television. He claimed innocence. He even wrote a check of 1 crore rupees directly to then Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, a claim that created its own political storm, one that Rao's government vehemently denied. The CBI registered its first FIR against Harshad on 5 June 1992. 9 days later, he was arrested. When investigators searched his properties, they found assets that defied imagination: 1.7 crore rupees in cash, gold, property across Mumbai. His brother Ashwin's accounts held hundreds of crore more. The big bull was now behind bars. But the story was far from over. The CBI investigation that followed was, frankly, messy. And I say that having reviewed the original charge sheets. Over 70 criminal cases were filed against Harshad Mehta and his associates across multiple courts. The investigating agencies faced a terrifying challenge. The fraud had occurred inside a system that was itself badly designed. Multiple regulators existed: RBI, Finance Ministry, SCBI, and none of them had caught it. SCBI, India's stock market regulator, had been established just 4 years earlier in 1988. It had no teeth. The Joint Parliamentary Committee formed in August 1992 under Ram Nivas Mirdha spent months examining how 31 banks were defrauded simultaneously. Its report, submitted in 1993, was damning. It indicted bank officials, brokers, and flagged systemic regulatory failure. Several bank officials were arrested. The chairman of National Housing Bank and Vijaya Bank resigned or were removed. Meanwhile, Harshad remained defiant. He was released on bail, rearrested, released again. He launched a website claiming he would expose politicians. He contested the 1997 Lok Sabha election from Ghatkopar as an independent candidate and won, though he was later disqualified. He was a man who understood that in India, legal battles could be stretched indefinitely. He had 27 pending criminal cases. He fought every single one. On 9th September 1999, a special court in Mumbai convicted Harshad Mehta in the Maruti Udyog shares fraud case, one of the smaller charges among his many cases. He was sentenced to 5 years rigorous imprisonment. But Harshad Mehta never served that full sentence. On 31st December 2001, while in judicial custody in Thane prison, Harshad Mehta died of a cardiac arrest. He was 47 years old. Dozens of cases died with him. Indian law does not allow criminal proceedings against the deceased. His family contested asset attachment orders for years afterward. The Supreme Court and various high courts passed multiple judgments on asset recovery. SCBI's recovery proceedings against his estate continued well into the 2010s. In terms of money recovered, it is estimated that less than 30% of the total fraud amount was ever returned to the banks. The victims, the retail investors who lost crores, received nothing. No compensation fund. No government relief. Nothing. The human cost was absorbed quietly, invisibly, the way India always absorbs the suffering of its ordinary people. What was proved beyond doubt in court? The securities fraud, the manipulation of ACC share prices, the role of Bank of Crore in issuing fake BRs. What remains alleged? The extent of political connections, the full network of bank officials involved, and exactly how much money flowed where. Here is what the Harshad Mehta scam actually changed. SCBI was given statutory powers through the SCBI Act of 1992 passed in the direct aftermath of the scam. It gained the authority to regulate brokers, investigate fraud, and penalize market manipulation. This is not a small thing. Before 1992, India's stock market was essentially the Wild West. The National Stock Exchange was established in 1992 partly as a response, bringing electronic trading, transparency, and counterparty guarantees. The ready forward deal system was overhauled. Banks can no longer use brokers as intermediaries in government securities transactions. The clearing corporation structure was strengthened. These are real, lasting reforms. But here is the uncomfortable truth. The scam happened because a system trusted opaque paper instruments over verifiable reality. And 30 years later, India has seen the Satyam fraud, the Nirav Modi scam, the DHFL collapse. The names change. The mechanism changes. The human cost doesn't. What Harshad Mehta's story teaches every Indian investor, every person watching this, is simple and brutal. If something is rising too fast, someone is pumping it. Your job is to ask who. Your job is to ask why. The big bull rode the system until the system broke. The people who paid the price were not the bankers, not the regulators. They were the retired school teacher in Pune who put his PF money into ACC at 8,000 rupees. They were always the last ones to know. Harshad Mehta died in a prison cell on New Year's Eve, 2001. His penthouse in Worli was attached. His cars were auctioned. But the retired investors who followed him into the market, they never got their money back. That's the real ending of this story. अगर आपको ये एपिसोड यूजफुल लगा, शेयर करो. Subscribe करो. Because next week, I am covering a scam that makes this look small. You don't want to miss it.